on gender segregation bill and women's body autonomy.
Thank you. I'm really embarrassed now. But before I introduce the panel, I'm going to again say this is in tribute to Mariam and the incredible work that she does. But look at the range of women and countries that are represented in this room and the range of issues, and this panel is no different. We have women from the Ukraine, from Poland, from Russia, women representing Muslim communities or of Muslim heritage, women of Jewish heritage. We're not just talking about Islamic fundamentalism. This is an issue that cuts across faith boundaries, national boundaries, every boundary that you can think of. So I've stepped in for Caroline, who unfortunately can't be here today, and I'm really honoured to be chairing this panel. I'm not going to say much, which is a first for me. I'm just going to introduce the speakers very, very briefly. When I introduce them, we'll see how briefly. And then I'm going to give you each 3 minutes to speak about the work that you do and the context that you're working in. And then I want to open it up to discussion because I think you would all appreciate an opportunity to ask questions and to engage with us up here on the stage. So I need the glasses. This is 30 years showing. Okay. So I have to my left Ahlan Akram, who is founder of Basira, which is a secular women's organisation working with British Arab women and trying to promote their rights. To my right, I have Eve Sachs, who is trustee of the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance here in the UK. Next to Eve is Homer Arjamand, I hope I said that right, who's coordinator of the campaign for one secular school system. Going back here, this is the order I wrote it down in, not the order of people on the panel. We have Ina, who many of us here in the room know, who is the leader of Femid, and does some amazing activist work in the Ukraine and in Russia and challenging Putin, and just generally fabulous. Then we have Nina, who is the Vice President of the Atheist Foundation in Poland, and she'll tell us more about that when she speaks. And last but by no means least, we've got Julia Almova, who founded an NGO in St. Petersburg helping children and young people and families of labour migrants. And she's currently coordinator of the EVES project, a Russian-Finnish feminist education project. So join me in thanking this amazing panel. So I think I'm going to start with Eve. So over to you.
Right, so my name is Eve Sachs. I'm a trustee of JOFA, the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance in the UK. I wanted to say that these issues are most relevant for women who are living in the ultra-Orthodox part of the Jewish community, where extreme gender segregation in all aspects of life is practiced. In schools, synagogues, social events, lectures. And although I'm not part of that community, I've reached out to the women who are in this community, and sadly these women are unable to speak out on these matters because they risk basically coming or shunning if they were to object. Many of them would like to move to the moderate part of the Jewish community or leave at all, but for multiple reasons they're unable to do so. So I think it's important to remember that not everybody in religious communities wants to be there and wants to be subject to someone's rules there. Women are raised in the public sphere in this community, even photographs of them are always blurred out. So young girls are being brought up in these communities where the only newspapers and books they see only are pictures of men. Girls' faces are blurred out even in toy packaging in the shops. And some of this actually is trickled into the mainstream part of the Jewish community as well. There's a leaflet that comes through my door, pictures of men, no pictures of women. And I've actually protested a couple of times. There's a communal Hanukkah lighting in Trafalgar Square. Adult women are never permitted to sing. Only children and men are allowed to sing because hearing a woman's voice, Kol Isha, that could be provocative to them. The organisers of the Trafalgar Square Hanukkah lighting, they cater for the strictest men and not for marginalised women. And it's common in mainstream synagogues to put on lectures just for men, just for women. So there's gender segregation in all parts of the Jewish community. In the mainstream part of the Jewish community, the hats are required, but actually it's only a fascinator and it's only during the service. So I'm more concerned with the ultra-Orthodox community, where women are not only expected to cover their hair with a hat or a wig, or in some cases both, but they're also obliged to shave their heads underneath to ensure that no one, and not even the walls of their house, should accidentally see their hair, because they don't have any. And there's no scope for dissent in these communities, and the hair coverings agreed between the father, the bride and the groom before the wedding, and the bride's often just around 18 years old. And even if a woman's husband is more flexible, wearing a non-standard hair covering like a hat, and you can buy in the high street, would solicitate people gossiping and staring. And then also women in this community are not permitted to drive, and if they do drive, they will result in their children being expelled from their schools. And that's in a community where there's no choice about which schools to send to. So that's how the driving bans are enforced. In this community, there's also no bodily autonomy. The girls are brought up not understanding that they should have any, married at 18, 19 to somebody they often haven't met before. Marital relations on the wedding night is required, and they have to be available to their husbands, and that's seen to be a divine requirement, so that if they go to the rabbi that they don't want to, the rabbis who are obviously male will defend the man's right, even if the woman's not happy with the situation. So it's hopefully covered.
Yes, gosh. And the similarities, given the history of antagonism between our two communities, the similarities in terms of control of women is something that the fundamentalists of both views share, with many of similar rules. The hearing of women's voices resonated with me, because that's something I was told when I was growing up, is you mustn't speak loudly, which is why I was blaming my parents for having a quiet voice, because no man should ever hear your voice. So a very similar thing. I'm going to go to the corner next. Thank you.
So I'm not going to talk about all the pressures that women are facing in so-called Islamic communities or Jewish communities or even Catholic communities and so many other minorities, because you've heard it all. I'm going to talk about solutions. What can we do? The reality is we cannot lift this social pressure on these women unless we all in this room decide, plus the whole frontline fighters for equality decide what to do. So in order to lift this pressure, we need to establish one secular school system, one secular law for everyone. And in order to do that, you need to demolish multiculturalism and cultural relativism, because they are contradicting each other. You cannot really have a secular state but also respecting culture which is belonged to 1400 years ago. You cannot really establish a secular state and secular school when you're allowing the parents to send the children, even your school is public school, is funded by the government and is secular, but you're allowing the parents to send the children to private madrasa, which is Sharia school, or private Hebrew schools, or private Catholic schools, or any other religious school. So therefore, in order to lift, in order to expect this woman to come forward and take their chador or hijab and be equal to men and have a voice and have a loud voice like Homa, you need to lift this pressure from them. In order to do that, because they inside the community, which is totally pressed by their, not only the family member, but community leaders, their individual rights are totally demolished by minority rights. In order to really do something about it, you need to enforce secularism in these communities, not respecting the culture, enforcing secularism. So any mullah, any rabbi, any priest who tries to marry these people, who tries to enforce religious dogma on children, they need to be tried, in my opinion, in public. That's the only way you can lift the pressure on these women. Otherwise, they face consequences. The least consequences they face is disowned by family members and community members. And what can they do without any support? They grew up in these families. They're frontline fighters. They challenge their family members, but they can't challenge neighbors, uncles, aunties, mullahs, rabbis, and everyone. As a result, the least consequences disowned, the harsh consequences is honor killed or transported to another country for the sake of marriage, doesn't matter whom, arranged marriage and all that. So we need the government first to demolish multiculturalism, second, to make sure there is no sensitivity towards any culture, and the third, to establish the secular state. And of course, public education is mandated because we need more frontline fighters. Thank you.
Thank you, woman. I'm going to move on to Nina now.
So I maybe will add something to my presentation. I'm a long day feminist as well, and atheist humanist. As vice president of our foundation named after Kazimierz Leszczyński, who was in 17th century a very big philosopher who wrote the treaty, the Non-Existentia Dei. We are organizing every year, we've been organizing since 2014, the Atheist Days, and I invite you warmly to this event because in Poland, under the National Catholic rule of even with some color of fascist, we need support and we need to confirm our right to think freely and our right to freedom of conscience or speech, of science, media, art, etc. And I'm also editor of the first ever atheistic review in Poland. Even under the so-called communist rule, there was no review, no media with atheism in the name. So it is the first, unfortunately for the time being, only in Polish. And now what I would like to stress in my speech. You don't need to be a Muslim woman and live under Sharia law to be a citizen of third class. Why third? Probably you understand why not the first, because first are the male citizens. But the second now in Poland, and not only, I think in Ohio, in Mississippi and other countries it's now the same. Second class citizen is an unborn citizen, and after those two only we have women. And it is the situation that we cannot accept. Our foundation is defending all the rights of all minorities discriminated against on from religious motivation. So our big concern are also women's rights. But it is not enough to fight for women's rights, for equality. We have to fight for a society which will allow to have it, which will allow to imply those principles. And now, on 11 November, Poland celebrated 100 years of independence. And our government organized for this occasion an independence march together with members of Polish and foreign openly fascist formations, fascist movements. 200,000 of them marched on the street of Warsaw. It's a big scandal. And also in November, on 28th, Polish women will celebrate 100 years of their voting rights. But in the current situation, is it the reason for celebration? Polish women, as I already mentioned, became now in Poland the third-class citizens. And their reproductive rights were then denied. First it was in '93, and afterwards, every year, every time, we have repeatedly attacks on women's rights to make this anti-abortion right in Poland, anti-abortion law in Poland even more restricted. Now we have ban on abortion with 3 exceptions, and our right, because it is our populist and sometimes conservative also right, which is allied to the church and which want to impose in Poland on Polish women a total ban on abortion, now want, under the pressure of the church, that women in Poland give birth even to unviable fetus, even to give the birth to the children just to see how they are dying. Why? Because the leader of our ruling party said they have to do it and to bring those children to baptize them. So you see, in such a climate, you cannot speak about bodily autonomy. It is not the bodily autonomy that we are speaking about. It is the right to autodetermination. It is the right to be human being. Because it is not only your body which is concerned, it's your very existence in a whole which is endangered like that. So I don't know what will be our next round, and I can speak more in details later on.
I'm not sure I have words to follow that, so I'm going to go to Julie.
Yeah, well, Russia is quite a big country, so we have a large variety of issues. And to begin with, like the ruling church now is the Christian Orthodox Church, and it can be compared now to a governmental agency, because on the one hand, it receives funding from the state. Its organization gets a lot of grants from the state. It nearly doesn't pay taxes. And on the other hand, it implements a function of promoting so-called traditional values, which is really profitable now for the government. As you know, on the international arena, Russian government tries to show off, to show that we are a great military power, and in internal politics it's actually the same. So they need to promote these gender stereotypes that the destiny of a woman is to give birth and to be a good wife, and the destiny of man is to be a breadwinner, but still to be obedient to the government, because in Russia we really love this saying that all power is from God. So it's really, it goes hand in hand, you know. And the spokespersons of Christian Orthodox Church, they like to make a lot of ridiculous statements, like, for example, that women should dress so that they wouldn't provoke men to rape them, and we need to introduce a dress code for women, that women have to like stay at home. And of course they talk also a lot about banning abortion, And I wonder why haven't they banned abortion yet, because there are a lot of talks about this. But in some districts of Russia, there are paralegal measures, such as like a week without abortions. Or in some districts, you need to get a certificate from a priest that you have consulted with him, and only then you can make an abortion. So this is how it is now. But there are also, as I said, Russia is quite large, so there are also districts when you just can't make an abortion. Legally you can, but practically you cannot. I'm not talking about North Caucasus region, like Chechnya, for example, Chechen region. And if we dwell on this region, then we should also recall honor killings, which are widespread, and there are a lot of publications in independent media about this. That there is child marriage, but by child I mean that, for example, there was a big case when a police officer, 50-year-old police officer, decided to take as a second wife a 17-year-old schoolgirl, and her family was against this, and they even reached out for the media, but in the end the wedding took place and it was shown like on television even, and the officer on children's rights of Russia, he said that, well, you need to think about it's another region, you know, and there women, they shrink and wrinkle at the age of 27, so what do you want? It's okay for them to marry early. So you can see this like, very exotification, yes, of another country to, not another country, another culture to justify violence. And in another region in Dagestan, we have female genital mutilation. And commenting on the report on genital mutilation, the also spokesperson, a very like top executive of the Muslim community, he said that yes, I think all women should undergo genital mutilation because there's too much sexualization in this society. And the Orthodox Church priest, he defended this guy, and he said, well, he didn't say anything horrible. No, I think that Orthodox women shouldn't undergo genital mutilation because they are diligent by themselves. So, and also, moreover, we also have close connection with post-Soviet Union countries, and we have a lot of migration, late migration into Russia. And of course, women in migrant communities, they are often, they are also not protected, and they often face like double discrimination because they're migrants and they have like fluctuating rights, and because they are women and they can be discriminated inside their community. So there is a wide range of problems here.
Nadia's laughing at me, and it's because as chair I kind of feel like I should say something after each speaker, but I'm a bit gobsmacked, so I'm going to try and collect my thoughts and then say something at the end.
Thank you. As someone who belongs to a group of women who manifested their rebellious body and did not ask for anybody's permission throughout the years, I will come back to this question of women's bodily autonomy and generally, why do we have to talk about women's body when we talk about religions? And more generally again, why do we have to talk about women's body every time we talk about women's oppression and discrimination of women? and I'll give you an answer, I'll be brave enough and confident enough, it's because this woman's body has always been a battlefield. It's a battlefield on which religious institutions, religious ideologies stage historical war against women. And religious institutions and religious dogmas make a big part of, they are responsible for a big part of this century-long historical conflict. This conflict lasts for very long, and it's a result of continuous opposition between religious dogma and the progress of women's rights, and women's rights as such. And this conflict was not initiated and is not wished, is not supported by women themselves today. We can see that this conflict continues to be actual in our women's fight, in our feminist fight, because we continue hearing how religious institutions with their male leadership, how in religious dogma, woman's body continues to be considered as sinful, dirty, always guilty, always wrong. And this body has to be hidden from public to protect men and to protect society. This body is always claimed to be wrong and dangerous, until today. We hear from different parts of the world various speeches, we read various headlines daily, how women's body, how different parts of women's body are considered to be obscene, wrong, and if they're exposed, they are considered to be dangerous, and therefore women have to be persecuted. And this is the reason why us, with feminine movement, we put in the center of our fight, we put in the center this body, to claim that there is nothing wrong with our body, and this body is not supposed to be hidden, and therefore we're going to expose it in front of the rest of the world to show that we are proud of those bodies and are not ready to hide them. And we've seen by the reactions, we've seen by activists from other feminist movements who dare to question and to challenge this idea of religious institutions, that woman's body is wrong and has to be kind of regulated. There should be many traditions and many rules applied to this body. We've seen by the violent reaction on our challenging of their rules and traditions, they are not ready to reconsider, to review, to change their perception of woman's body. We continue to see how on each part of woman's body there are numerous laws, rules, numerous visions and perceptions, patriarchal perceptions are projected. And now here we've heard some of the speakers who mentioned that they have always problems with our hair. Others mentioned the reproductive rights. But indeed, there is no part of woman's body which is free from religious traditions and religious rules. There is just simply no free part of our body. And if we just go from head to toe, we scan this body, we will see how they don't want to let our heads free, they want to control our thinking, they want to control our hair once again, they want to cover our eyes, they want to shut our mouth, they want our bellies to be only connected to our reproductive function. They're obsessed with controlling our vaginas, once again, with abortion laws. They are even adopt barbaric traditions and claim that they are religious traditions, such traditions as female genital mutilation in some parts of the world. They're obsessed with controlling each part of woman's body. And my point is that because they continue to be obsessed with controlling this body, it's our duty today to finally say that we're going to liberate this body. Because through liberation of our own body, we will liberate our own spirits, our minds, and ourselves in general. So I'm here, if I'm here today to bring something, to add something to these amazing voices of women who shared their experience, I'm here to make this call, to take finally back our bodies into the hands of its rightful owner, to women, and not to accept anymore their definition of who we are, of what our body signifies, of what this body is for, what is the mission of this body, but finally say that it's us who are going to define what my body is about, what it's going to be, when it will be sexual, this body, and when it will be political, when it's going to serve my political interest. So this is my call today to every woman in the room. I'm sorry, gentlemen, for once you're not concerned. So I skip that, but I also I cannot keep silence about, well, I just said that I was so inspired and so touched by every female voice we heard today, and their powerful stories and the testimonies about their resistance, but I also cannot ignore the fact that I'm also very hurt daily in the latest times, and I'm really afraid, simply as a woman, not as a feminine activist or a campaigner, but just simply as a woman. I'm hurt to see how many of fellow women are actually embracing this system of male dominance and this idea that your body by definition is sexual. How many women today claim that they are religious feminists, putting their religious identity in front, their feminist aspirations. We also hear today how many women claim that all these religious traditions and rights is something that protects them. It's something that defends and protects their dignity. Well, I will not question their choice. They are indeed very free to choose conservative ideas, patriarchal ideas, and apply them to their life. But I think that we cannot allow that these ideas will penetrate feminist ideas and will hijack feminism, and that modesty dress code will be presented as a sort of a way of protecting yourself and ensuring your security or protecting your dignity. I'm very disturbed by this idea, and then sometimes I challenge my own perceptions about those claims and those arguments made by those women, and then I say to myself that indeed probably in some situations this modesty dress code maybe protected some of them from harassment, from rape, maybe. But then once again, why women's body has to be protected? I think that if in the first place religious dogmas would not define this body as wrong, obscene, sinful, and dangerous, we wouldn't need even to think about that this body should be protected. So I think that all of this has to be challenged. All of this should not be ignored or silenced, especially within feminist movements. And I think that we should not let their ideas to hijack the movement for women's liberation and the movement on which we count a lot, the worldwide movement that will reclaim women's bodily autonomy. And I think that today, with the rise of female voices about sexual violence, sexual harassment, we've heard all those testimonies of Me Too campaign that come from various groups, communities, and society, including religious women who spoke out against the harassment, sexual aggressions in religious communities, in the places of worship. I think that it's once again, it's about making our own voices heard and saying that today it's us who are going to define who we are, how we're going to live, and what our religions also stand for. I think that it's also time that religions also would be, that religious institutions would be embodied in woman's body, that religious authority would be represented in woman's body, and that women's voices would also claim that my religion stands for those ideas and not for patriarchal notions, not brings with it patriarchal notions. So I believe that this is the way, at least I'm very intrigued myself by this idea, and I believe that there are many ways still, many strategies that we can explore to continue to resist the rise of and the penetration of our lives by our bodies as rebellious. We should not hesitate. We should not feel afraid to hurt someone's feelings. We should not feel afraid to hurt their feelings because they never hesitated and felt afraid of hurting our own lives. And I think that finally we should stop asking ourselves who is going to let us be who we want to be? Who is going to let us be free? We should start asking ourselves who's going to stop us? Who's going to be able to stop us?
it's very hard to carry on from this. It's simply, I agree with everything, except that I'm going to take it from a different perspective. But before I do that, I'd like to say something which was discussed in the previous panel, just for 1 minute or less. They were talking about alcohol. My way of talking about what we are going through is that by discrediting the call for Sharia councils or for Sharia as a whole, and go back to it is interpretation of 4 males, and they differ. The funniest thing is that the consensus, anything in consensus came on women's body and women, but the rest they differ in their opinions, such as alcohol. Alcohol in Islam, 3 of them have agreed that it is bad and it shouldn't be drunk. But Abu Hanifa have said, no, you can drink alcohol as long as you don't go to pray while you are drunk. So this is the way we have to question what's next for us with this Islamic interpretation, religious interpretation. What I would like to stick on, now you can start counting. I will start by, one day I was driving in the East End around 3 o'clock, and I was shocked. It was the time of the schooling the girls out of schools. And to be honest with you, it saddens me as much as it shocked me when I saw how many young girls, young ones, not only who are wearing hijab and dressed up in a way. I mean, it made me think, so I'm going to take hijab in particular and take it from the beginning. When was the rise of hijab? The rise of, because, I mean, I grew up in a Muslim country and I was born in the faith and I'm still in, but I had never seen it while I was growing up. The hijab started, promotion for hijab started by 67, loss of the war with Israel, because the scholars said that Israel has won the war because they follow their religion, while we did not follow ours. Of course, it came after that in 79, the Islamic Revolution, Khomeini. And not all of those Islamists are wanting, they just wanted to show the Islamic awakening, and they connected it to women's body. Women's body that it was encouraged in every possible way. It started by putting the hijab and then segregation between societies. Of course, it was connected with a political voice that the rise of political Islam. And the strangest thing at that time is that they succeeded, if I look at the Arab world or Muslim world today. It saddens me to say that they have succeeded in that, because when I go back, I found 70, if not 80% of women and young girls are wearing hijab. And the contradictory in that is that they wear the hijab and then they wear the most tightest jeans and the biggest makeup and God knows what. So anyway, what was the aim? The aim was the emphasis of the collective identity, the Ummah identity, the Islamic awakening. And there were many times when I questioned that, why the Islamic awakening only came to put a hijab on a woman and a young girl? Why it did not come to give justice for women, make family status law, in all of these countries? Nobody managed to give me an answer. They, of course, the easiest way to shut any question is that this is Allah's call, this is God's call. I differ in that respect, because I don't think God could be that cruel to make me a less of a human being and not entitled to breathe, at least. I don't want to work naked, but I don't want to be held down, especially in the heat. And this is the argument I use it most of the time, a lot of time with women back home or around me when they talk about hijab and it's a necessity. No, it's not. Hijab is still a debatable issue. Nobody, not a single scholar have managed to prove 100% that it is in any text or anything. So the question is, they connected it with women's body as being a blemish, connected it to honor, connected it to so many other things. But basically, again, that we are different, we are superior, we are different in our religion, we carry the truth, and we should not emulate any of the Western countries, the kafir and all of this. Now, I don't want to carry on with this, I have so much, but what really scares me is the government here accepting all of these changes in the community, in the society at large, and really keeping a big loopholes in democracy. And not only this, we are sandwiched between Islamophobia and political correctness, that anything we talk, you know, it's against, we lose freedom of speech, we use freedom to criticize. Islam or any other religion, they all are more or less the same. And actually, I'm so impressed to hear what you have said at the beginning, because the more I dig up in where we got a lot of these things, I found out we are so similar when it comes to women's rights and women and all of this. And the rise on both sides nowadays
is new as well.
Yeah, it is scary, it is scary. So really, I'm going to say one more thing. Recently, as a Abu Dhabi company have been, of course, everybody wants to get more money and do something, and of course, the easiest way is through religious stuff. How could you say no? Anyway, a company in Abu Dhabi have invented Muslim dolls. And Muslim dolls are, 2 of them are without the hijab, while 3 are with the hijab. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say to the young little girls? And what saddens me most as well, if we are going to go on universality of rights, there is a huge violation of children's rights by the law in Malaysia, where a girl is obliged to wear a hijab from the age of 7. I'll stand here, but I'm open to any questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Nina wants to add something, and then I can make some comments.
1 minute. Okay, I wanted to add something to my 3-minute speech. I would like to connect the question of independence march of fascists in Warsaw and the question of bodily autonomy. First, Jules Ferry, a big Republican activist in France, said celui qui tient la femme tient tout, et c'est pourquoi l'Église la tient, c'est pourquoi la démocratie doit lui enlever. In very short, he who holds woman holds everything, and that's why church holds her, and that's why democracy has to take her over, to take her back. And why church do that? What is the connection with fascists? It's political question. It's the question of control, of power, of authoritarian power, of patriarchal authoritarian power. That is the key of this question. It is, of course, there is a question of sexuality, but it's who control fertility of women, control the whole society, the whole country. And that's what started in Poland with depriving women of their rights, now ended up with the authoritarian rule, with destruction, with elimination of separation of powers, of executive, legislative, and judicial powers, with destructions of all democratic procedures. That's the main mechanism. First, you oppress women, and then you deprive every members of society of their rights. And that's what I think is the more important question, and that's the lesson that we can teach others based on our experience. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Mina. Other members of the panel have asked to also add things, but I'm going to exercise chair's prerogative and say no. Only because I want to open up to the audience. But before I do, there's a couple of points I want to make very quickly. Today is the 25th of November. It's the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. And you've heard from the speakers just the threats that women and girls face across the world, and also boys, because when we look at boys who are abused, whether that's physically, sexually, emotionally, it is at the hands of men, pretty overwhelmingly. And I think we have to remember that. And this battle is long, but we continue with the fight. And by siloing the work, saying that this group of people only suffer these sorts of issues, we lose opportunities to make connections and stand together. And I think that's something we need as activists, as feminists, to come together and learn to do better and learn more of. There's two things that struck me. One is children, and where children sit in all of this, because we talked about children and the hijab, the messages we give to young girls, and the control over their bodies. The UK is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Within that,